I feel like we just did this.
Well, we might have. We might have just did this. This is the magic of podcasting.
Yeah. So this is...
Could be out of order. Could be in order.
It could be. Could be. I'm in a different room. Can you see?
I can. I
you
can
see?
see you're in a different room.
Yeah.
You're in a... You've got all sorts of doodads and
Yeah.
gizmos
This
and
is
stuff.
this is where I shoot my YouTube show in here. I thought I'd
And what's
switch it up.
what's the name of that YouTube show?
Well, it's called Me, Myself, and Die, and
That's what it is.
it's doing quite well for a tiny little channel. So, I thought I'd switch it up, and because it's just kind of easier to set things up in here, we've got all the things ready to go. So, that is what that is all about. I'm so tired.
Well-
Oh my God, I'm so tired. I can't even think. So,
Really?
yeah.
Oh, well, I'm going to make you tireder because this is a perfect segue to tell me not only about your channel, but games with multi-sided die,
Dice.
dice,
Yes.
because I don't understand nothing.
Yeah. Most
about
people don't.
Nothing.
Most people have no idea.
And okay, so here's what I know. I know, I think it started with Dungeons and Dragons.
Correct. Way back in the 70s. Yes.
Yeah. So, do you know if there was like one before that, or like it was? So it was
that was the granddaddy of them all. Yes.
Okay. So here's what I know about that, and it might have informed why I know nothing else, because when that was out and in the ether,
Wait, can I guess? Can I guess before you tell me? Can I guess
yeah.
that the particular religious affiliation that you were part of heard about it and said, "That's from the devil"?
Yes,
Yes.
precisely.
Yes.
Now, traditionally, I didn't put much stock in such warnings because I like whatever, but it was enough to make me not
Right.
pursue it. You know, it was like I'm not that keen on it anyway.
No, it's not your thing.
And then there's that, but I mean, I don't live under a rock, and I see that this thing, especially of people of a certain age, is enormous, like gigantic. And I didn't say enormous. Because I had a little cough.
Yes.
I had a little cough on deck.
Yes. I thought that
So,
was a tech issue, but no, it was a you issue.
No, it's a me issue. So I know it's enormous. I know many people play it. I know you have a channel devoted to the world of this.
Yes.
And then there's the critical mass.
Critical
is that what it is?
role is what they're called. Yes, critical role. That's okay. That's all right.
See?
You're under no obligation to know anything about them, other than that they're a bunch of voice actors.
Yeah. So that's what I know, and I know that there's dice involved. And teach me, Master. Teach me.
My God. Okay.
I told you I was going to make you tired.
All right. So first of all, let's address this satanic panic thing, which is what it was called in the 80s.
So was it really satanic panic?
The satanic panic. It didn't really hit in Canada as much as it did in the States, in places in Canada. But certainly I was never really affected by it growing up in Edmonton. We heard that there was a bunch of lunatics in the States who were like, "This is evil because you're summoning demons," and we were like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" Like, we just dismissed it entirely because it was worthy of dismissal. But to go back to the roots, basically what happened was you had this group of people who were doing war games in the 70s. Well, since time out of mind, right? The wargaming has been with us, as military exercises in order to train officers in strategy and things like this. So wargaming became very popular in the 60s and 70s, where they were doing a lot of historical recreations, like Napoleonic battles, and they would have little miniatures of the units fighting each other, and there would be all kinds of rules about how you could move and how you could fire and what a casualty meant. And typically there was a referee who was overseeing the sides to make sure that everybody was playing by the rules. Okay, this was the world of wargaming. Well, this is a really long story. I'm going to truncate it. Basically,
go, because I'm really curious. I'm not making this up.
So around about 1973-ish or so, don't quote me on the year, but around there, there was a couple of fellas in Wisconsin, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And again, I'm not entirely sure if that's where it started, but it's in that neighborhood. Where basically they said, hey, how about instead of having these miniatures on the board represent a unit of soldiers, what if each miniature represented one individual? And what if each of those individuals had individual capabilities? So now it was like, oh, okay, so now this isn't a strategic war game about armies clashing. Now these are individuals. Oh, so Joe, the officer, is riding his horse and he does this. But very quickly it became, what if we took historical battles like the Norman invasion of England, for example, the Battle of Hastings. These things were very popular, historical wargaming, medieval enthusiasts used to do this stuff all the time. And they basically said, well, what if we added the fantasy element to it? What if instead of a unit, you're dealing with an individual, and that individual is like a hero? And now you're not just fighting other armies. What if you were fighting a dragon? Or what if you were fighting like armies of goblins or orcs, drawing upon Tolkien's literature, which had been huge in the 60s.
Also satanic.
Yeah, dummy. In the 60s, Tolkien experienced a massive boom on campuses all throughout the United States, and that's what really propelled him to the forefront of sort of popular culture. But nonetheless, you get these wargamers who basically said, what if we made a fantasy version of an historical war game, and instead of big armies, it was individual units or individuals. And this became the prototype for what would go on to become Dungeons and Dragons. So the two guys were Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, and Arneson basically had a lot of the rules down. Like he created this world called Blackmore, I think it was called, and this thing developed where his characters, so each player now played a single character instead of a side, right? They played a single character. And Arneson became the referee of the whole world. So now the characters were only in charge of their own characters, and Arneson played everything else in the world.
How?
So, yeah.
How did you communicate then?
Well, because in the early days, it was very simple. The players started off, and again, don't quote me on all the details here, because I'm going to get some of this wrong, but the gist of it is the point.
Sure.
The basic setup was, there was the good guys, and there was the bad guys, okay? The good guys would all meet in a castle, and underneath the castle, they knew there was this labyrinth. There was this labyrinth of layers that was populated with monsters. It was controlled by the bad guys. So the good guys would get together and they would kit themselves out with their gear, as in the characters would, right? The players are all sitting around a table. Remember, all of this just happens in your imagination. That's where the board is, right? Is in your imagination. And the good guys, their whole thing was going into the dungeon beneath the castle to explore it and try and clear it out, and mostly to get the treasure and get out, because that was the whole function of the character's purpose at that time, was get in the dungeon, get the treasure, and get out. So this became a hugely popular thing in this one particular area, and Gary Gygax found Dave Arneson, and he found the Blackmore game, and said, this is awesome, and I think we can package what you've done here, and I can put your rules together into a series of comprehensive rules, and I think we can sell it to other war gamers who would be interested in that. And thus,
so they were physically meeting, and that one guy was being the referee.
Yes.
And there were players in his presence doing
Yeah,
these characters.
So physically, if you were to look at the setup, you would see Dave Artisan sitting at one end of the table. You would see all of the other players sitting around the table. Each player might have a miniature that represents their character. They would certainly have a sheet of paper on it with a bunch of statistics that represented what that character is capable of. So those statistics would be things like strength, how physically strong you are, dexterity, how agile you are, constitution, how tough you are, how many hits you can take, intelligence, how generally perceptive and intelligent the character is, wisdom, how much sort of worldliness the character might have, or just general sort of knowledge about the world, and charisma, how easy it is for that character to attract followers, okay, or to talk somebody out of a fight, let's say, okay. So each character.
So let me ask you something.
Yes.
So how were you assigned said character?
Well, I don't know how they did it in the early days, but how it is typically done is players get together and the GM, the games master, or the DM, which is what Dungeons and Dragons called it, the dungeon master, right? But gradually over the course of years, DM became a term that's really reserved for Dungeons and Dragons, for D&D, because there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of role-playing games that... So GM is the term I use, the game master, right? The referee, it's all that means. So the GM sits down and says, I'm going to run this campaign, I'm going to run this game, and it's going to take place in this setting, and here's the parameters of the game, and here's the kind of thing that the characters can do. So then each player says, okay, well, I want to play this. I want to play a human fighter. And another person might say, I want to play an elven wizard, whatever is appropriate to that particular game world. And then they make the characters, and there's a million ways to do this, but basically they take dice, just like regular old dice like this, D6 is right there.
Yes.
And they roll a number of them and sum the total, and that becomes the value of the statistic that represents those characters. And there's a lot more to it, but basically there's an element of randomization, there's an element of choice, and eventually you create the character that you hope you want, and that becomes the vessel through which you explore this game world, is the character. So then from that point on, the players interact with the game world through the character. So the GM's job is to describe the world and to respond to the character's actions. So let's say the characters are in a dungeon and they walk into a room, and the GM says, all right, you enter through the north door. Before you is a room about 20 feet by 30 feet wide. It is covered in detritus. It's covered in broken down barrels. It was maybe a storeroom at some point, but everything's covered in cobwebs and dust. It looks as though no one's been in here in some time. At the far end of the room from you, there are 3 doors set in the wall. One is a wooden door, one is a metal door, and another. The third door is made of a substance that isn't immediately obvious to you. What do you do?
It sounds like The Price is Right.
Well, this particular example, yes. But at that point, the players say, okay, well, Joe the fighter is going to walk up to the wood door and see if it's locked. And then another person might say, well, I'm a thief character, so I'm going to go up to the middle door. I'm going to check it for traps. Or maybe another character says, I'm really curious about these broken down bits of barrels or whatever in the corner. I'm going to examine that for any evidence of what else might have been in this room or whatever. The point is, it's totally up to them. And every time they choose to do something, the games master tells them either what they find, or he gets them to roll a dice to see if they can achieve what they want to do. So let's say the fighter goes up to the door and he says, I want to open the door. And the GM says, it's locked. And at that point, the fighter might say, you know what? I'm just going to try and break it down. And at that point, the game master looks at the rules of the game, and he knows that in order to break down a door with the fighter's particular strength, he has to roll a 1 to 3 on a 6-sided die. So he'll say to the fighter, okay, you want to break down the door? All right, describe how you do it, and then roll a d6, and if you get 1 to 3, you're successful. So the fighter says, all right, I steel myself, and I take 5 steps back, and with a great roar, a mighty roar, I charge the door and put my shoulder into it. And then he rolls the dice. And if he gets 1 to a 3, he succeeds, at which point the game master says, your shoulder impacts the door and bursts it off the hinges. It splinters into 1,000 pieces, revealing the chamber beyond. But if he fails, The GM might say, you crash into the door and it really hurts and you suffer 2 hit points of damage. Hit points are just a measure of how much damage you can take before you expire. And that, in a nutshell, is how the game works. The players choose what their characters do. The GM tells them what the result of those choices are, and you just go back and forth. It's like a conversation. So, except it's adjudicated by these rules.
There must be like a book that the game master is going.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I see. Here's what you need to.
Yes, the rule book has all of the things he needs to know. In the best case scenario, in a lot of other scenarios, the GM doesn't know all the rules and he has to make stuff up on the fly, and that's okay as long as he's consistent about it. But that gets into the weeds of all kinds of stuff. But yes, basically the answer is there's a rule book that everybody's largely familiar with, the basics of the rules, and they all can proceed based on that.
So I can see how this would be immensely popular online because you can connect with people and, someone's the game master and all of that. But so previously, people got together in a room, and how did you determine who the game master was?
Well, in my group, because I can only talk about my group, there was about 7 of us in our group. There was 3 of us that were the GMs, and that was mostly because there was 3 of us that wanted to be the GM.
You could read? Oh.
Oh, that was certainly a fundamental condition of the job. Most players don't want a GM. Most players just want to play. Most players want to go in there and just explore the world through their character. GMing is a lot of work. And it's a ton of effort to create the world, to create the NPCs, the non-player characters. That is everybody in the world who isn't a player character. But that is precisely the thing that I love to do. So I spent my childhood building and creating these vast, detailed fantasy worlds that only ever existed in the minds, in the shared and collective imagination of me and my friends. But those worlds were so real to us that when now you talk to them about their experiences, they talk about it as though it really happened. Now, obviously, we know it didn't really happen. We're not insane people.
Right.
But to us, that experience was so visceral and so, magical, really, to use the term, that it became like fundamental aspects of our childhood and of our adolescence, and even now as in our adulthood. I mean, imagine you're reading the most engrossing novel you've ever read, except that each chapter is tailored directly towards what you think the character's going to do or what the character should do. Now, that said, it's not a novel, and it's not a TV show, and it's not a movie. Role-playing games are an absolutely unique form of entertainment because the audience is also the participants. They're the ones making the story emerge. They're also the ones observing the story at the same time. You don't get that with any other form of entertainment. So it is a very, very unique thing, and it's powerful. When you experience a good game, it's so addictive. It's the best drug ever.
So is there a beginning, middle, and end, or is it just go on and on and on?
It depends on the game master. It depends on the game. It depends on everything. A lot of GMs set up a story. That's actually a controversial word in a lot of gaming circles. But again, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds. But basically, a lot of GMs will set up a story in which things are going to happen and the players take part in it, yada, yada, yada. I don't tend to run games like that because for me, when I'm GMing a game, I don't want to know what the story is going to be. I want to be as surprised as the players are when things emerge. So my games are, I set up a world, I set up the non-player characters, I set up plots. In other words, I set up what all the NPCs are trying to achieve, knowing that it's going to interfere with what the players are trying to achieve. And then I let the players push against the world. And every time they do, the world pushes back somewhere else. And that becomes the conflict. And that just goes on until there's a satisfying resolution.
I think I'm still not, I'm a dum-dum.
No, that's okay.
I still don't quite get how the game master is in control. Like, isn't there a book?
Okay, so there are a number of books. let's go back to the source. Let's go back to D&D because that's where it all started.
Yeah.
There is the player's handbook, and in the player's handbook, you find all the rules you need to create a character and to basically run a character in the game. What there is not in the player's handbook is all the rules for the dungeon master. In other words, how to stock a dungeon, how to create a world, how to create an economy in a world, how to determine what the monsters are. All of these things are in the dungeon master's guide. So if you're a player, you have the player's handbook. But if you're the GM, you have the dungeon master's guide because that's the stuff you need to know that the players should not know.
And who wrote that?
In the source material, in the original, it was Gary Gygax who wrote that. He basically took the rules that David Arneson had created and he compiled them and packaged them, and blah, you get D&D.
So now, because it appears that there's a bunch of splinters, like it's not just D&D.
Yes.
Do you
correct.
just call it role-playing games?
Yeah, RPGs, role-playing games. Yeah. And
So are there a
not the saucy
million
adult
versions?
kind.
Like, here's your Dungeon Master handbook, and here's your character handbook, or
there's a bazillion different iterations of it. There's a game that I ran on my channel recently. In fact, I would recommend you go check out at the very least the first episode because you'll watch it and you'll go, oh, that's what a role-playing game looks like. It was based on the Blade Runner movies because there was a game released called Blade Runner, which was a role-playing game based on Blade Runner. And I shot it for the channel. It was an 8-episode series, so it's a very limited thing because it tells one very specific case file that these Blade Runners are working on. But go watch that on my channel because you will watch that and get an immediate understanding of what a role-playing game looks like.
okay. Do you have to wear costumes?
No, that's LARPing, and I'm morally against that.
What is LARP?
Live action role playing.
Teach me, master. What's LARPing?
LARPing is live action role playing. That is a whole other thing that I never did because those people are weird.
Yes, they are. For all you LARPers out there, my email address is
Yes, or my
and my
email
physical address is.
No, it's a whole thing. LARPing is a whole.
That sounds like a
other
Ren
thing.
fair.
Yes, it's very similar to that kind of thing. It's way more involved than that. But yes. No, we
Yes,
don't.
milady.
We don't.
Greetings, good kind sir.
Yes, none of that at my table. No.
But there's an element of that, isn't there? Like, I mean, when you're interacting
Yes.
as a player, do you have to use words like good sir and milady?
First of all, if you're playing in a medieval fantasy, it depends on the setting. It depends on the players. So there's this dichotomy between what they call first person and third person, and it is just like in literature. First person means you're telling the story through the eyes of your protagonist. Third person you mean you're telling the story from outside the protagonist. So first person is. Let's go back to the example I gave you about the fighter in the room who wants to bash down the door. So if he's in character, if he's from the first person perspective, he will say, all right, I step back 5 paces, I steel myself, and I launch myself against the door. Ah! And then he rolls the thing, okay? And maybe he does it with an accent because this character sounds like that, like he's a big Northman. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Strike out of the way, lads. I'll take care of this. And okay, so that's first person. Third person is the player says, all right, Throg the fighter, because let's say that's the name of the fighter. Throg the fighter steps back, steels himself, and with a mighty barbaric yop, he hurls himself at the door. So he's describing what the character's doing. That's third person. So a lot of third person gamers don't speak in character to each other. They'll say, my character says this. But first-person players will just dispense with that and immediately talk to the other players in character. That doesn't mean they're always doing voices or anything like that. Voice actors do. But that is where I cut my teeth on so many of my accents growing up, was because of this game.
So the critical hat people.
Yes.
Critical role
No, I
people,
like that. We're going to
the
call
critical
them critical
mass
hat.
people.
Yeah, critical mass, yeah.
Critical
Critical mass hat.
thought the critical thinking people. So are they first or third person?
They are largely first person. Yes.
Okay, so they're acting out.
Yes. So the
what they're
reason,
doing
one of the
as the
reasons why they're
character
so popular is because there are a bunch of professional voice actors that sit around a table and talk to each other in very silly voices and do all sorts of actions.
Yes.
And everyone goes,
Yes.
look at that.
Yes.
And that's why they're very popular. Yes.
Yes, well, I can see why.
Exactly.
And
it's really true. I mean, I'm not mocking them, by the way, because my show
no.
is exactly the same thing, except that I play all the characters. So it's me talking to myself.
Well, that is very unlike you, Trevor.
I know.
To distill a game of multi-persons down to just one being you. That's so unlike you.
Well, I want to get
I don't
rid of
even understand it.
I cut out the middleman.
Curveball. So, I see then a through line because I also don't play video games.
Right.
I'm not much of a gamey guy. We'll get into that in a minute. But the whole role-playing thing and what you're describing sounds like so many of the video games that we are employed in. Like, you're on a quest and there's the giant goblin and a protector and a guardian and a thing you got to go through. And I think, is that the through line? I mean, is this kind of why?
Where do you think all these games came from? They all came from
exactly.
role-playing games, yeah.
Wow. So I just missed that.
Yeah. Well, demons. I mean, the devil.
Yeah, but, that's not, it's not an excuse because I spent my time watching classic cinema and Woody Allen movies and dissecting them.
So you're a nerd of a different stripe. That's all.
I was absolutely a nerd for sure. Different stripe.
Yeah.
And music nerd as well. So I get it. If there was any question that I was not coming at this with sincere curiosity.
Oh no! I believe you. I believe you.
I just go, wow. Wow.
But you need to understand, I really want to make this clear. Today is all the rage and all the cool kids are playing D&D and everybody's talking about it. I'm talking about it right now on the internet. I play on the internet for tens of thousands of people. But you need to understand that if you went back to 1982 and told 10-year-old version of Trevor, who was very, very much a gamer at that time, and said to him, do you know what? When you're 50 years old, you're going to be playing this in public, that kid would have laughed in your face because in those days, it was not cool. You did not talk about it. If you did,
it was a total subculture.
Yes, you became a pariah. You became one of those weirdos. So for me, my whole thing was I always called it the game. You never talked about it to anybody who wasn't already in the club, and you never talked about it publicly. You just pretended.
It was like a cult.
It was like it was like a cult. Yes, exactly.
Okay, that I can understand.
Yeah, and we had these
secret
funny,
handshakes.
It was code. So there's a funny story where my friend Ross met our friend Matt. They were working together at some warehouse in the dock, doing the thing.
As you do.
Yeah. And they got talking. And they had
moving the frickin' boxes around.
That's right. So they had to lift this giant pallet up to the truck, and it took them a while, and there was a lot of exertion as they were driving the pallet to wherever it had to go. My friend Ross said, "Boy, oh boy, that was tough. It was like we needed the strength of a giant or something to do that." And Matt turned to him and said, "Or perhaps we needed special gauntlets that gave us, say, the power of an ogre." So it was code for these items in D&D that made your character stronger. And they immediately went, ha! And so they became fast friends because of it, because they knew that they were in the club. Yeah.
and like the ancient history of the gay community. There was certain buzzwords.
Often likened myself to the gay community. I've often put myself in the same category. I've struggled.
Honestly, sidebar. This may be controversial, but I have because being the way I existed in my religious life, that was all encompassing and by any definition was a high control religion. Like,
For sure.
you must do all these things. And I think I mentioned this before. Fortunately, I had small L liberal parents who realized that you needed to exist in the world
Right.
that we lived in, and being a pariah was to no one's benefit. So it was always like, pick your battles, and to keep it on the down low. And we didn't have that expression then, but that's what that's exactly what I did. As I was a Jehovah's Witness on the down low, and it was the same kind of thing where I went, I walk among you, and I'm not you. So similar to the game community, it's like, don't talk about it. And I'm sure you weren't, the game community was not doing this because I'm going to get the crap beaten out of me, or that I'll there'll be some dire consequence if you identified as a gamer. I don't think so.
Except a kind of
you were a
social
nerd.
death. There was a social death involved in
Yeah.
that. And when I was in high school, my objective was to become the most popular guy in high school, which I did, by the way. However, certainly I had this dirty little secret that I was this closet gamer, and I knew that if that ever got out, my social life was over.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because clearly I don't know about the gaming thing, other like in all the levels. Like, I don't know about the mechanics of it. I don't know about the socio, whatever, the school thing.
Yes.
But that's very interesting. That is very interesting. So my point was, in a very similar way, and this is the whitest, privileged, middle-aged white guy thing ever. But let's be a little controversial in this podcast.
Let's get some views.
I honestly felt that because I was kind of like, I walked among the general population, but I had this secret that we knew the when the end of the world was coming, and we knew all the secrets of the universe and all of that. But I didn't really want to present with that. I felt very, very akin to what it must have been like for a closeted gay person,
Right.
because it's like, do I really want to lead with this?
Right. Right.
Especially in those days. Oh my God. Hey,
Well, yeah.
everyone, I'm gay in grade 11. Yay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really gonna go well.
Well, when you put it that way, it's true. It is the same thing. I mean, the consequences are certainly a lot less than what a lot of gay kids in the 80s would have had to suffer.
Of course.
But in terms of the mind, in terms of the mindset, the mentality, and the fear of discovery, I think it's probably very similar.
And to be very, very clear, it's not that I felt like, oh yeah, I know what your troubles are. I got the same thing. Oh yeah, same thing if you're black or a minority. Yeah, like if you're a minority. No, I get it, because I'm the same. No, I'm not saying any of that.
Just suck it up, princess, and learn to play some hockey.
Exactly. So, but the core, the underpinning of it is that I understand it. Like, I really understand that feeling of, I don't want to reveal this because this could be monumentally devastating socially.
Yeah,
So
and it's interesting.
I'm really sympathetic.
Yeah, for sure. And on that topic too, today, like the RPG scene, like I said, it's never been more popular. It's never been more out there. It's never been like, everybody is doing it. And these kids, they have no idea what we went to. They had no idea. And to that point,
I get it.
You know where I'm going with this. It's like those crusaders, those gay crusaders in the 80s who, in some cases, literally put their lives on the line to just have equality. Now they're looking at a whole generation that takes all of that for granted, who knows nothing about the history, who knows nothing about the struggle, who assumes that everything was always this way, and so they're pushing the envelope even farther and farther and farther. I kind of look at the gaming community a little like that. It's like, you kids have no idea what we had to go through. You sit here and you play your games in public like a bunch of yutzes. Oh, you don't have any idea. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, the nerd culture, which, to a greater or lesser degree we make our living from,
yes,
is unbelievable. Like, you've got the incredibly stunning young girls who, put on a big pair of glasses and they go, I'm a nerd. I like to play games and I like to watch cartoons. You're the furthest thing from an actual nerd. Like, I know nerd. Oh, yeah. And they're, nerds of every stripe. But the cool thing about all of this is that, okay, if only there was a way. Can we look up when was Revenge of the Nerds released?
Oh,
the movie.
Wasn't that 88? I want to say 88.
Was it that late?
I could be wrong.
I am so old. Revenge of the Nerds. If I'm looking it up right now, people.
Finally, we get to the fun part where Ian looks stuff up on the internet.
Yeah. Send your requests. 84.
84. Okay. Well, I'm a little
84. Off. And I mean, we're living in that world now. That was a big joke. A bunch of nerds. Yeah, funny glasses and guys that, read comic books and play games.
Well, look at it. What's the most popular type of media entertainment right now? It's superheroes. Anything to do with superheroes. What's the most popular stuff to do on it's video games that are all based on these RPGs. D&D itself is this gargantuan, giant, massive juggernaut. And these are all the things that those of us who were there in the trenches in the 80s and the 70s and 80s would have never dreamed, never, ever, ever dreamed that we'd have got to, And now
Very
it's interesting.
interesting.
It's been a journey.
Well, it's funny. There's a topic for an episode. Like, who were the nerds in the 50s? Who were the nerds in the 60s? What were they nerding out? Was it electronics, radio sets?
Yeah.
I got a ham radio.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Or anything to do with science, especially in the 50s.
Science.
Anything to do with high academics, because the 50s was the age of the Poindexters and the Greasers, So
right.
It's always been with us, this ridiculous notion that some people are quote unquote cool.
Well, I remember very early on in my academic life, realizing, clearly there was no Revenge of the Nerds movie to lay out the framework of how the world worked, but I just got it, and I went, you always knew, there was the jocks, and there was I was in the underbelly. I was the very similar to the story you said, where, of course, I wanted to be popular, but I was not in any of the popular groups.
Right.
I mean, I was like, my sporting life was mediocre at best. I tried, but it just wasn't whatever. So I was a filmmaker, and I was performing, and I'll run. I'm going to do a lunchtime disco, stuff like that. Nerd stuff, and I guess I did realize that when I looked at these popular people, I just went, yeah, you're having your moment now.
Right.
Check back.
Right.
Let's check back. And I really did have a strong inclination that was what really was going to happen. And, you go back to your class reunion, and fortunately, now I was blessed. Like, as I got older, like into 11th and 12th grade. That's for you Americans. Or grade 11 and grade 12 for you Canadians.
I don't think they could have figured that one out.
There was a really good group of kind of like multi-hyphenates, people who were, there's a guy and he's on the rugby team and he's also in the play. Ooh. Or there's a guy, who's on the basketball team, but he's also on the debate team. Oh. So there was a number of people that kind of like moved along the groups, and that was very, very good. And it propelled me to this. Oh, now this is kind of like a humble brag. Valedictorian means something very different to me than it means to most of America. Like if you're the valedictorian, it's like, oh my, that's like, you were academic, or there was something very, very special. Like you're going to Harvard or something. Well, in my school, Burnaby South, which was the populated with the offspring of mill workers and BC Tel workers,
right.
Like blue collar folk, right? And there was a contingent of people that went, it'd be great if that Corlett guy was a valedictorian. That'd be fun, eh? and I did not campaign. People put up a campaign for me, and because there's these earnest girls that were like, I'm going to be the valedictorian, like they're really making a big deal about it. And then you've got the anti valedictorian, financed by a bunch of greaseballs and stoners going, that would be frickin' hilarious, eh? And I won.
Yeah.
Like I got all the votes. So like it's a nice little feather in my hat, but it was only because I kind of moved amongst the groups. So that was the height of my popularity. It peaked grade 12. That was it.
In
good
my
way to go
in my
out.
high school, it was all about the cliques. Very, very, very cliquey. It was just like Heather's. Remember Heather's? Just like Heather's, except without without an armed Christian Slater walking around. But
right,
it was very, very cliquey. And as soon as I got there, I realized the only way to dominate the cliques was to not be part of any of them, but to transcend all of them.
Float.
And so I did the exact same thing, and it worked so
funny.
well.
I didn't know this about you.
Yeah. It worked so well that the staff of the school saw it, and they saw in me an opportunity to help bridge the divide between the cliques. So I was picked by the staff to do things like lead a big pep rally, to do this thing, because I was the head of the feature artist committee, and that was like the
Sure.
The committee that did the crazy like variety shows and stuff. I was in the drama club.
Right.
I was the head. It was all that stuff. But I was also the guy that could move among the cliques, and it worked so well that in grade 12, I was short 3 credits to graduate. And the reason why I was short 3 credits to graduate is because I failed religion class. This was in a Catholic school. I failed religion class because I kept disproving the existence of God to my teacher. He didn't like that very much. I really wish I could remember how I did that, by the way. That would be some pretty good stuff. But it's gone.
Yeah.
God struck it from my head.
Yes, clearly that's what happened.
So I was 3 credits short, and I thought, well, this is no good. I have to graduate. So I went to the principal, Rick St. Arnaud, and I said, Rick, we got a problem.
Oh, I love this.
And he said to me, don't worry about it, Trev. We'll take care of it. No word of a lie. No word of a lie. So
Are you kidding?
Yeah, he said, we'll give you special credit for a special project. So I was really...
Oh!
Yeah.
But that's real.
It was real. You know what the special project was? I was really in tight with the drama teacher, of course. And so he said, the principal said to me, maybe just do something with Gary, the drama teacher. So Gary and I sat down with a video camera and we just interviewed. He just interviewed me and we talked for about 20 minutes. And that was it. No one ever watched it. Special project, there's your credits. I'm like,
special project.
Who gets away with that? Like, who?
Yeah.
Come on,
yeah.
So I had a good thing going.
But that's a good lesson in many things, but like
Yes.
coloring outside the lines.
Exactly.
Just go forth. We got as you said, we've got a problem.
We've got a problem.
Is there a way we can solve this problem?
Uh-huh.
Yes, there is.
And all of that would have been dead on arrival if the barest whiff of my being a player of Dungeons and Dragons had gone out to that school. None of that would have occurred.
And this episode, ladies and gentlemen, has just gone full circle.
I like to bring it home.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was very good. That was very, very good. Yeah. Well, school life. There's an episode.
Yeah. Oh, I could.
Another one.
Oh, I got stories. Stories.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 23 Skidoo, yeah. Rock and Roll High School. Yeah. All those, yeah. Well, I am so glad that you gave me a crash course in gaming. And I that was actually a new thought to me that that from that kind of role-playing stuff came video games in large part, because the only video games that I actually did play, this is going back to like Atari, were like Tank,
Right.
Frogger,
Right.
boop, 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 Pong,
Yeah.
obviously. And then, fast forwarding into the 90s and 2000s, they were sports games like NHL 99, NHL 2000. So I was never really into, and it probably is because of that history of, I don't know, I'm just not really into the fantasy thing. But I knew, War. What's the huge title?
Warcraft? World of Warcraft?
World of Warcraft. I knew there was a World of Warcraft, and so many others. Just not my bag, right? Just not really my thing. But I get it. I get it.
Well,
get it.
I'm serious. You go to my channel, Me, Myself, and Die, on YouTube, and look for the Blade Runner playlist, and just
Blade
watch,
Runner, okay.
watch the even the first. I know you want to watch.
Okay,
no, but I'm
you
saying,
don't have to yell. Jeez, you don't have to
because
yell. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll
it's a
increase
great
your view
introduction. Well, I'm telling you, that one extra view, that's going to put me over the top. So if I don't,
Do you want me to like and subscribe to?
Yes, please. Could you?
Fine. Oh, hey, that and for anyone who made it to the end of this episode,
yes.
please like, subscribe, comment, review,
right, share.
Record it on a compact cassette. Take it over to your mom's. Listen to it around the campfire.
Wow, that's good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know how to promote, Trevor.
We're up to 60 Kens at this point. We gained one over the past 3 weeks. That's pretty good.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. Thank you,
new Ken. And of course all the old Kens too. I have a headache and I don't have anything to drink like you do. So I'm gonna go. Oh,
okay.
Bayo, zing.
Cheers. Till next time.
Cheers,
everyone, and my good friend. Bye-bye.
Bye.